Well, apart from the sexual and the asexual reproduction, vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation is comparatively simple and a much primitive process. This reproduction takes place simply by the cell division or by separation from the parental body, where mitotically the cell all divides and an individual is produced. Now, the offspring usually bears exactly similar quality to that of the parent from which it has been derived from. Now, in case of vegetative propagation in plants, we have two methods or two major classification of it. One, the natural vegetative propagation, and another one being the artificial vegetative propagation. So here in this particular video, we'll be focused on the natural vegetative propagation. Now, in case of natural vegetative propagation, the very first one that we are familiar with is formation of adventitious buds, which means formation of plant part, the bud which will develop into the plant part, or actually the whole plant rather, is actually formed from places which are not like any way related to condition of growth or anything. Like for instance, the leaf, which is not responsible for production of any like newborn individual or anything. It is from the leaf we find that the birds are coming out. As the example is shown here, in the case of this plant, the bryophyllum, we find that the leaf blades, around the leaf blades at the edge of it, we are going to find that there are formation of these birds. Each and every of those individuals that are at the end of the or the apex of each and every of the serrated leaf blood, we find that those individuals are actually one individual plant. So from a single parental body, we may find a tremendously high number of individuals or a high number of newborn, you can say, from a single plant. As you can see in the picture, as it is shown here, a single plant with so many birds growing around them. Each and every of the bird, if it is removed from the parental body and then sown into the sand, or actually the soil, so we are going to find them to be growing very nicely there. Now, next is actually another type which is called the stem bird, which is mostly seen in the case of the dahlia plant and also in the case of rose and many other plants also out there. So, where we find that from the parental stem, the main stem or any of the branch, we suddenly find from a certain node there is a development of a bird which does not develop into the grow into the plant itself. I mean, sorry, grow into the leaf or grow into any flower. It's nothing like that. It is not any floral bird, but rather this bird, if it is detached with some portion of the stem and is planted onto the soil, this actually grow into the full plant again. So this is something which is known as a stem bud formation, as shown in the picture here. Next, similar thing can be seen with the roots. Now, roots are there are many examples of roots being used as a source for vegetative propagation, where we can find each and like the roots of the certain plants. For example, like even in the case of trichosanthis or apomia type of plants, we are actually I should have shown you a picture of that plant actually here. So we may find them to start growing these roots. Yeah, a very good example will be the asparagus. If you're familiar with it, asparagus. Though asparagus, they also develop the root slightly differently, and but from their root, in all the cases, from their root, there is development of this bird. As you can see here in the left hand side picture, there are birds growing from the root, but on the right hand side, this image is actually of that of the asparagus, where we find that the root portion of it has started growing the individual plant. Now that section can be cut and can be planted separately from where another set of asparagus, completely newborn asparagus, can grow. So this is actually a way of propagation or way of growth of adventitious bud in case of in case of those plants which are coming out from the root. Now, like apart from it, there are certain times we find that certain portion of the plant gets modified into a specific structure, but that specific structure can bear some sort of adventitious birds from them. So here is an example of the very famous modified stem that we are very much familiar with, the potato. So this modified stem potato, they have these birds growing out from them, which we have seen
a lot, especially around this time we will find that they are growing all the potatoes at home. They start growing this birds, so they are actually from the node region of that particular plant that we find that these small birds are coming out. So sometimes like these are called the germinating eye from which the birds are coming out. So these birds, each and every of those birds are actually like the portion which can be cut open, and if planted, this actually grows into the full stem or the top portion of the plant, shoot portion of the plant. You can see the image on the left hand side is where we can see that from the tuber directly the plant is growing like that, isn't it? So we can see like the young shoots are actually growing out of it. So this thing are extensively used, especially with the case of the potatoes, that all of these things are used for growth of the plant, new numerous numbers of plant, because from a single potato we may find three or four birds coming out of it. Maybe they are dormant, but if they are being treated properly, they are sown to the soil and being watered properly, they do grow into the full individual. Similar is with the rhizome. Rhizome are another type of modified root with a little bit of fleshy wrappings around it. Now that particular rhizome, we find that from the the birds are growing out from the internode region, and we will find that in that particular internode area, this new shoot or this new birds that are coming out of it will grow into the shoot and will grow into this full plant, as you can see in this image. And I guess already you have you understood which plant this is. This is an example of ginger, but similar case can be found with the tamarind also, sorry, turmeric also. And we will find that this plant is actually, they produces this bird in large amount. And this also is like quite numerous plant can be obtained from a single rhizome that we see. Now, both of these things, like all these cases, I must mention this, that they actually grow whenever the condition becomes favorable enough. Okay, means the condition when it is favorable for their growth and survival, only then that this bird actually starts growing properly. Otherwise, unfavorable condition triggers the growth of the bird, but means that bird will remain dormant. It is not going to extend itself fully. All right. So the moment this water and everything, or humid condition, or the soil nutrient and everything, it comes properly, that moment we find that the birds are properly started proliferating, or properly starts propagating itself, and then the roots and everything also they come out, and finally the plant they grow. So another example of this propagation will be the corms. So corms are example which we find in the case of like in which we find that the auxiliary birds are actually growing. They're again they are like kind of a shoot stalk. Okay, and they are quite a solid structure. They're quite fleshy in comparison to that of the rhizome and the other example. They're quite fleshy. Now now this particular thing, it actually they are found that they grow, and they, from that particular part we do find that that this specialized structure, these specialized birds, they actually start coming out. Now the birds can be growing like at the corner at a certain position, and that each and every one of those combs that are growing out of it can be detached and can be grown into the full individual, or it can be placed in a singular spot, and now three plants or two or four plants are actually going to grow out from the same place. So that way the comb is actually a slight different, it appears quite different to that of the other type of um, propagations, vegetative propagations. Now this is the example of the onion. Now onion, they grow these bulbils, another kind of like modification. Now this modification mostly is like modified leaves, we say it. Now this modified leaves, they produces or this like the fleshy leaves, they produce this bud at the very central core. Means whenever we cut the onion, the very core portion of it is where we find that the birds are going to grow. Now probably you have seen sometimes onion having a smaller piece of onion growing out of it. Now keep that in mind that this smaller piece of onion is actually a daughter bulbs. Okay. The main bulb is the main body, the larger piece, but this daughter bulb have started growing out of it from this particular node of this particular plant, and we find that from there that these birds will actually grow, and then will slightly will detach itself from the main plant, and then go from that particular thing. Okay. So in case of onion, we will say that there are two types of bulbs that are possible. One is the central bulb, which is this soft inner core portion, which is going to grow into this bulb. This the dead center part. In this image, you can find this this white portion that you see at the very centralmost part has turned slightly yellowish greenish in color because it is started growing into the shoot. The other one is this tunicated bulb, which is the tip portion, this area, this tip portion where all the fleshy leaves they merge together. Now this dry scaly leaves that are there at the top, from that portion also the bird can come out. Okay, so there are like two different places where we find that the birds are actually can originate. One is this tunicated bulb, which is at the tip portion, and another one is the one that the core at the centralmost part. From there it can grow and can form out of it. Okay. Next, we will say that the modified stem is actually on some sort of aerial stem that we find that grow and develop into this different individuals from them. So the example of them will be the runner. The very it's a famous example of runner. You probably have seen in the case of the grass and all that they actually have one major one plant from where a stem is actually growing out, and this stem is growing and touching the ground at a certain spot, and that particular place you find another bird is growing out of it. Now this is kind of modification of the branch itself, where the branch actually it grows, and then from each and every of the portion where it comes in contact with the soil, maybe the node, maybe not the node, even it is actually that particular place where we find the bird has started growing out. Now, depending on their nature and type, they are classified into certain categories. So we are going to discuss each and every one of them. The first one being the runner, where we find there are the slender, long branches that are growing out of it, and it is they may run parallelly to the ground also, and they are definitely aerial, or sometimes a little bit sub-aerial, means it remains slightly underground, partly, but means most of the part remaining exposed to the air only. Now that particular shoot will actually grow, and from the node region we will find that the roots have started growing, and then we find the plant also started producing a small aerial shoot from that particular region. So that will be the example of that of the runner. Now, when we talk about its second variety, the stolon, which is mostly seen in the case of the strawberries or even in the case of grasses also, we find that it actually produces extended horizontal runners all around every direction, and that runner, whenever it grows and grows, and then finally when it touches the soil at a certain spot, that area the root and root starts adventitious root starts coming out from that particular region, and that region, it's always going to be the node region, and from there these nodes are going to grow into this full plant. As you can see, the image shown here with the example of the strawberry. The bottom image is actually that of the strawberry, where this plant is actually growing. Means strawberry plant, you place it at one spot, from there you find that numerous stolons will actually come out. Okay. Now, when we talk about stolon, the stolon can be very long. It comparatively, it can be very long, but with respect to the stolon, there are shortest one that can be found. Means stolon which are fundamentally they are much shorter in length, and those are known as the offsets. Now, offsets usually we find with the case of the econia. Econia means the water hyacinth plant that we see in any water body, pond or lake, some places like that. They fill up this entire area, and we have seen in Bengali it's called kochuri pana. All right. So this particular plant is actually what we find that this particular plant, it actually produces this offset. If you can focus onto this image at the bottom, you will find that this two plant that was shown, there is a green color stem that is connecting the this root region of this plant, this fibrous root region that we are seeing out here. In between that, there is a straight green color thick stem is there, That one is actually the one we call the offsets. Okay, and that offset actually they grow, they are comparatively shorter in comparison to that of the like the case of stolons, they're comparatively shorter, and this one they grow completely large and big, and we find that they start producing out like a large amount of this individual from them. The final type will be the sucker. Now, sucker is actually an underground type of runner. Okay, it's actually kind like the variety of runner only, where like the growth that you see, it actually is like the stem, they erect itself, they extend itself, and from the stem, the roots they come out, and suddenly at a certain spot, it will grow into this it will start producing an aerial root. Now, this runner, this particular type of runner, which are called the suckers, are usually seen in the case of chrysanthemum. Okay, chrysanthemum plant, they show this particular type of arrangement. Even we may find them in the case of mint. The mint plant, you know that if you plant them, they actually starts growing into that particular tub. They fill up the entire tub, and if you just remove the top layer of the soil, then you will find that there are suckers running underneath that. Okay, because the sucker like irrespective to that of the runner is actually underground, it's not sub-aerial type. Means runner, they hug the soil, and sometimes they partly get buried under the soil, but this one they will remain completely underground. Stolon, on the other hand, will remain outside the soil. It will be completely aerial. It will be on top of the soil. It will run above it, and then will touch at certain spot. So there lies the differences between this different type of like the subaerial modified stem system. So the remaining of the type of the modifications we'll be discussing on a different video.